What's the biggest problem that we have? Of all the other problems, what is the single biggest problem that we have? Give up? The biggest problem we have is that we believe that we shouldn't have them. In this video, we're going to dive deep into a topic that has fascinated entrepreneurs, athletes, entertainers, high performers, world leaders for decades. These people have been fascinated with this one topic. The topic is peak performance, but more importantly, what we're going to talk about in this video is how you can train your mind to think like a champion and overcome the problems that you might have. Welcome back, this is Kevin. You might be saying to yourself, what the heck do problems have to do with peak performance or having a champion mentality, and what the heck are these things anyway? And that's what we're gonna really uncover here. But I want to connect the dots real quick. If we're operating at our peak performance, it means we are overcoming our problems, not getting bogged down by our problems. So when I say the biggest problem that we have is that we think we shouldn't have them, and that's not my line. I don't know where I got that, probably somewhere in the world. But when I say that, that is the mentality for people who don't operate at their peak performance. If you are bogging down in your problems, if you're thinking that your problems define you, if you think that your problems are your destination, then that's why you don't overcome. That's why you don't show resilience. And that's what today's video is about, how we can operate at our peak performance and have the mind of a champion. But we have to start by defining what is peak performance anyway. I mean, it's thrown around a lot. It's in a lot of coaching programs, a lot of marketing. We see it all the time, peak performance, but what the heck is it? Essentially, peak performance is the mental, physical, and emotional state where you operate at your highest potential. It's not just solely about your talent and your ability. It really is about aligning your actions so that you achieve the result you want. Let's get a fun fact real quick. The American Psychological Association shows that people exhibit certain traits when they're operating at their peak performance. Those traits are heightened focus, resilience, and a growth mindset. But one of the things in that study that I found fascinating was the crucial distinction between how most people perceive failure and how people who are operating at their peak performance perceive failure. People who are operating at their peak performance levels don't see failure as a stop sign, they see it as feedback, something they can grow from. And I thought that was just a crucial distinction to make. So when I say the word champion in this video, what does it mean to think like a champion and be like a champion? We're not talking about necessarily pro athletes who are winning the title, although we are going to use pro athletes as case studies in this video. I really want you to think like a champion being someone who is aligning their actions with the results they want. That is championing your cause, championing your peak performance, championing your purpose here on earth. And that's really what we want to think of the word champion as defining today. But let's get into what it really means to think like a champion. And there are three core mental traits that a champion in this case might have that most of us don't have on a daily basis. And it hones in around focus, belief, and resilience. And a great example of all these showing up in one person at the same time, if we go back to the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Michael Phelps displayed this repeatedly in his journey through the Olympic Games. But there was one particular race where he was going for a world record. He jumps in the pool and his goggles fill with water. Now, obviously that's not ideal. That's not in the plan. That's not what you train for, but it happens. And most of us, we would consider that to be a disaster. It's like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. It was a good run. We had a good time, but not Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps actually continued swimming, relying on his instincts, and he ended up winning the gold medal in that race. So how does that happen? Well, if you go back to his training, he practiced swimming blindfolded. He practiced swimming. He was planning for something like that to happen. And what that allowed him to do, it allowed him not to panic. It allowed him to keep his focus on the task at hand, which was win a gold medal. So obviously that practice also honed in a belief that he could swim that race without eyesight confidently. So his training allowed him to instill in himself a belief that he could do it. And then of course, resilience, just getting through obstacles, keep pressing on, keep going, was something that he just brought to that race. And it was a phenomenal story to hear that while that happened, most people would say that's unfortunate, it was a good run, but he had trained for something like that to happen, which anchored in his focus, anchored in his belief and his resilience. And another fun fact, studies published in the Journal of Psychology of Sport and Exercise indicated that high-performing athletes like Michael Phelps have higher levels of self-efficacy. And what that means is they've developed a belief in the ability of themselves to succeed in specific situations. So in this case, it was the belief that Michael Phelps can succeed even though he cannot see where he's going in the pool. So that really served him well at the 2008 Olympic Games. Tony Robbins says the quality of your life is the quality of where you live emotionally. And what he means by that is that if you control your emotions, you can control your life better. And when it comes to overcoming challenges, belief is crucial. It's vital. And one of the key phrases that I've used a couple times is that I want to point out is the belief in ability. These champions have a belief in their ability For me, it really hones into great belief in my ability to learn. I often feel like I need to be an expert in everything, or I need to know how to coach around everything, but I have great belief in my ability to learn, so that if something comes up that I don't know, it really behooves me to not let that debilitate me, but to really dive in and develop my skill and my knowledge around those things. And you could adopt that same thing for yourself. And to stick with our athlete case study, Serena Williams is a great example of this. When she was growing up, she was told that tennis wasn't for people like her. The hell does that mean anyway? But the point is, she had every reason to give tennis up. People around her, society, circumstances, she had every reason to quit, and she didn't. Her belief in her ability and the relentless pursuit of excellence allowed her to become one of the greatest athletes of all time. So hey, listen, I'm not Michael Phelps and I'm not Serena Williams. I suspect you're not either. If you are, hi, nice to meet you. But what do we do about this? How do we take action, and how do we really anchor in the belief in our ability to expand? And it comes down to one simple thing. You want to start by focusing on small wins and celebrating those small wins. Oftentimes it's enough for us to see the peak, but we don't see the mountain. And so we don't celebrate when we get to base camp 1 on this journey. We don't celebrate base camp 2 or the progress that we're making. And thus we can get debilitated by just thinking we're not moving forward when we actually are. But if we focus on small wins and we celebrate those small wins, it gives us that dopamine hit. It gives us that reassurance. It gives us that reaffirmation. But what we're really doing there is we're rewarding our own behavior. This is a practice of the success cycle. And it's really the intention of reinforcing behavior that brings the result you want. It builds your confidence. So if you do nothing else, celebrate a small win today. Celebrate something that moves you forward instead of letting all the failures debilitate you. Celebrate that win that you got. All right, let's talk about resilience. I've formed some opinions about resilience in my recent past, having gone through life and some challenging times. But here's what I observed in myself was that you never know how much resilience you have until you need it. That resilience is kind of like insurance. You hope you never have to use it, but you really want it when you do. And one of the key things when it comes to peak performance and a champion's mindset with resilience is that champions don't avoid failure. They don't see it as the destination, they see it as progress. More importantly, they see it as necessary to the process. Because let's face it, you can't become a champion in anything you do without someone beating you first. Because that's how you learn. And if you look at anyone in business that has a successful business, anybody that you might look up to, go back in their timeline. There will be key moments where they failed but did not stop. They innovated, they tweaked, they pivoted, whatever they did. They failed, but they did not stop. And that's the peak performance. That's the champion's mindset that we're talking about. Seeing failure as the end point would have taken a lot of our technology and businesses off our plate today. But when you see failure as part of the process and something that will teach you what you need to do to actually get it right, then you can charge forward with confidence. Doesn't mean you're not going to fail, it just means you view failure differently. The Harvard Business Review did a study and it determined that people who have resilient behaviors see failure as a building block or feedback or constructive and not as a debilitating practice. These folks have been able to reframe failure in a positive light, and that's what makes them more resilient. All right, so how can we build our resilience? What can we do? What do we need to do up here to make us more resilient? Well, the natural instinct is to say when we're going through a challenge or hitting an obstacle, is to ask the question, what is this supposed to teach me? And while I do think that that's important, I think there's a better question to ask. And the better question is this: what do I need to apply that I just learned to the next step of my journey? What do I need to apply that I just learned to the next step of my journey? So not just acknowledging what you're supposed to learn, but acknowledging how you're supposed to apply it. Again, action. We're aligning action to form our results. All right, on to the next. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that I'm a big fan and a practitioner of visualization, affirmations, and manifestation. And these same techniques or similar techniques are used by champions to visualize their outcomes and strengthen their mindset. And we're not talking about just thinking positively or hoping that you win or anything like that. We're talking about, there's actual science to this. The Cleveland Clinic did a study and it determined that athletes who visualize their performance without actually doing it, so they're just visualizing what they're doing, the outcomes they want, all of those athletes showed drastic improvements on their actual results. Meaning if you're visualizing shooting free throws and you're making them, then the possibility of you actually making live free throws when you're doing it in a game increases. And this works because the brain can't distinguish between vividly imagined results and real life. It believes that you're actually doing it. So all the muscles are going through it. The brain is going through it. You're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're smelling it, you're doing all the things, and the brain doesn't know the difference between you imagining it and you actually living it. That's probably a deeper topic for another video, so we'll come back around to that. And one of my favorite pro athletes, Kobe Bryant, he had a very strict process for visualization. He visualized the entire game before he got on the court. So arguably, you could say that his brain had already played the game when the game started. And that helped him get results. I don't need to tell you about the results he got. He is one of the greatest of all time, arguably. But that practice of visualization for someone at that level worked for him. And it'll work for you too. So what do you do about it? Obviously, we're not Kobe Bryants, but what do we do about it? If you spend 5 minutes every morning and visualize your day, visualize what you're doing to achieve the goal, the progress you're making. If you visualize that every day, visualize you being the person you want to be, saying the words you want to say, showing up the way you want to show up. Close your eyes and visualize it. Really get vivid in there. If you're going to a networking event and you want to get a client, visualize meeting that client. What are their name? What do they look like? Where are they sitting? Really go through that. The chances of that happening increases significantly. All right, let's recap. So to think like a champion, to be a champion, and to have high performance, you really want to focus in on 3 areas: focus, belief, and resilience. Those are the 3. And using tools like visualization, it makes it really easy to develop those skills and to develop those parts of your being and parts of your mindset so that when you need them, you're calling on them instinctually. And if I'm being honest, people who operate at their peak performance, they weren't born with some secret sauce or genetic deficiency or genetic code. They weren't. They've just trained their minds to think differently than you and I might think. And that's the great news, because if we go back to that idea that we believe in our ability to grow, we believe in our ability to learn, then we can learn to do that too. And as Tony Robbins says as well, he says, whatever you consistently think about and focus on, you move toward. So why not start thinking like a champion today? Hey, thanks for joining me today. If this video was beneficial to you, please consider subscribing to my channel, or at least give me a like, so I'll keep making these videos for you. I need a little encouragement sometimes. I hope this really helped. Don't forget to share it with anyone you know. Put questions in the comments below. I'm happy to engage with you and answer any questions you might have. But for now, I really want you to practice celebrating a win today. Small steps, small steps. You can think like a champion no matter what you do in life. You can show signs of focus, belief, and resilience that will help you operate at your peak performance. It requires action. I encourage you, please do something today that will get you to that peak performance. My name is Kevin. As always, I'll see you next time.